Hey everyone, it's Wednesday, time for Wisdom Wednesday. I have been listening to podcasts and doing a lot more research recently on mitochondria and mitochondrial health. And in doing so, one of the most recent podcasts that I listened to talked about a very ubiquitous compound that's out there that we actually have in our body, but it's also found in certain foods and different types of marine life, and that is glucosamine. And the interesting thing about it is that we have used this particular substance, molecule, if you will, in conjunction with chondroitin for joint health. And there is a lot more to this in the anti-aging and longevity world that I thought I would just bring to light, because I think it's just kind of fascinating that we have this molecule out there and we are learning more and more, and research is now looking at this. And the way this came about was a group out of the University of Washington 10 or 15 years ago just surveyed thousands, maybe 10, 20,000 people on their supplements and followed them through and noticed that there seemed to be decreased morbidity mortality for people taking certain supplements. And the one that really kind of rose to the top was glucosamine. And it's been thought that it can be helpful for joints, and it appears that there is mixed reviews and mixed science on this one, but if you look at a particular form of glucosamine, that is glucosamine sulfate, and if it's taken for long enough, there does appear to be some real benefit to this. This is a natural molecule that we see in our joints, and it can also be found in shellfish and certain fungi and perhaps other foods as well. But it is present in our joints and in our cartilage and in skin, hair, and nails, as well as ligaments. And it's thought that it has some benefit because it has the ability to be incorporated into those areas of the body, particularly if it is in the sulfated form, and can have some impact. But what they noticed with longevity is they saw this as just something they observed, and then they went and did some studies on animals, and indeed seemed to extend life in mouse studies and other animal studies. And then they began to look at, well, what molecularly is happening? And glucosamine is a basically glucose molecule with some amino acids on there, amino groups on there, I'll say. And so what they discovered is that it seems to bind to glucose receptors, particularly in the mitochondria, and it seems to have the ability to mimic calorie restriction, and seems to have this ability to act as a hormetic stress to the mitochondria. And because it takes up the receptor for glucose, the mitochondria senses lack of nutrition or lack of intake, and perhaps slight starvation or calorie restriction. And as such, it begins to sense that there is fasting or famine, and in order to make up for that, has the ability to, interestingly enough, create more mitochondria and try to produce more energy, and it becomes much more flexible in what it's using for energy. So it's an interesting idea, and studies are being done and showing that we are seeing greater longevity with glucosamine. And you want to be sure to get the right formulation. You want a glucosamine that is the glucosamine sulfate form, and it must be done over time. It's not something that you just take here and there, but you're in it for the long haul. But certainly an interesting compound and molecule that may have some real traction in the longevity world, and was just something new that I came across and found fairly fascinating. Over the next several weeks, we're going to continue to kind of look into mitochondrial health and ways that we can improve mitochondria. Again, it all comes down to lifestyle and diet, nutrition. That's the foundation. And then folks who really optimize their exercise, we know that exercise is tremendously helpful for mitochondrial health and creating these little tiny engines in the body. And the other thing that we'll talk about coming up about mitochondria is there's more to mitochondria than just these, what we call the energy part of the cell, the little energy factory. It actually has a great role in our immune system, and I'll share that with you as we continue to dive into cellular health and particularly this little tiny organelle in the cell that most cells have thousands of them, but this area within the cell, because as you know, all disease begins as a dysfunction of cells. So if we are going to try to create health, we need to understand what it is that brings health to the cells. And a big part of that is the mitochondria and the ability to produce energy. Anyway, I know it's kind of nerdy and sciencey, but I think we can all kind of relate to glucosamine. We've heard of that, and that it may have some real benefit in terms of helping us from an overall cellular health standpoint, and looking at a lot of different areas in the cell that can create energy. It seems to have benefit for lifespan. It seems to mimic a caloric restriction. It induces new mitochondria. It reduces morbidity and mortality in humans. It may have the ability to lower inflammation, protect our DNA. It does definitely have the ability to reduce some forms of cross-linking, which is problematic in the joints. And then it may have some real benefit for appearance as far as skin health and overall health in general. So another little pearl. You all have a great week, and we'll talk again next week.